He saw the wheelchair first, rolling, actually rolling, toward the crumbling edge of the riverbank. And the woman in it wasn't screaming. She was arguing, phone pressed to her ear, one hand slamming the armrest, completely unaware that the ground 6 inches in front of her wheels had already given up. Ethan Cole dropped his tools and ran. He didn't know her name, didn't know what she'd built, what she'd lost, what she was fighting for on that phone call. He just ran. But what he couldn't have known, what would keep him awake for weeks afterward, was that saving her life was the easy part. What city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss a single part. The alarm went off at 4:47 a.m. Ethan Cole didn't hit snooze. He never hit snooze. He opened his eyes, stared at the water stain on the ceiling, the one shaped vaguely like the state of Ohio that he'd been meaning to fix since last February, and he gave himself exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds to lie there and feel it. The weight of the empty side of the bed. The silence that used to have a sound to it, used to have breathing in it, used to have Emma in it. 3 seconds. Then he got up. That was the deal he'd made with himself 2 years, 9 months, and 14 days ago, standing in the rain at a graveside, while his daughter gripped his hand so hard he could feel every small bone of her fingers. 3 seconds in the morning. Then you're a father again. Then you're a man with work to do and a child to feed, and a life that doesn't have the luxury of falling apart. He made the coffee. He packed Mia's lunch. Turkey on wheat, no crust, apple cut into 8 slices, a small bag of goldfish crackers, and he set the purple butterfly lunchbox on the edge of the counter where she'd find it. He stood in his kitchen in the dark, and he breathed. This is enough, he told himself, the way he told himself every morning. This is enough. Mia came downstairs at 6:20, 3 minutes later than usual, her school clothes on but her left shoe untied, and her hair in what could charitably be called a ponytail. "You're late," Ethan said. "By 3 minutes." 3 minutes is 3 minutes. She climbed onto her stool at the counter and pulled the lunchbox toward her, checking it with the focused suspicion of a customs official. She lifted the lid, examined, closed it. "You forgot the note," she said. Ethan paused, coffee cup halfway to his mouth. "What note?" "You always put a note." She looked at him, completely serious, completely matter-of-fact, with those brown-green eyes that were Emma's eyes down to the last detail. "A little one, on the napkin." He set down his coffee, picked up a pen from the junk drawer, tore a corner from the paper towel roll, and wrote, "You are the whole point of everything. Dad." He folded it and tucked it under the apple bag. Mia didn't look inside again. She didn't need to. She just ate her cereal and swung her feet and said, "What are you doing today?" "Mrs. Donnelly's porch in the morning. Then the Riverside Park job." "The river one?" "Yeah." She pointed her spoon at him. "Don't fall in." "I won't fall in." "You say that every time you go near water." "Because I don't fall in." She tilted her head, unconvinced. "Still." He drove her to school, walked her to the front entrance, watched her break away from him at a run the second she spotted her friends, waving backward at him without turning around, already somewhere else, already in the world of being 8 years old and completely alive. He stood on the sidewalk until the door closed. Then he got in the truck and drove to Riverside Park. The Riverside Park job was a railing reset. 60 feet of aluminum along the east embankment path. 2 posts worked loose from their footings over the summer. Straightforward. He'd had jobs like this 100 times. Show up, assess, fix, leave. Clean math. He'd been working for about 40 minutes. down on one knee, grinding rust off the first footing plate, when he heard it. A voice, sharp, elevated, carrying the way voices did on cold mornings over open water. A woman's voice, not frightened, not calling for help. Furious. The clipped, deliberate fury of someone who had been containing a very large amount of anger for a very long time and was currently losing the battle. Richard, I am telling you, if they call that vote before I've spoken to Patterson, I want an injunction filed by 9 a.m. I don't care what it costs. I built that company. I built it. And I am not going to sit here and watch 3 people who couldn't run a lemonade stand dismantle everything I... Ethan looked up. She was 30 feet north on the path, just past the end of the railing section he was working on, which meant she was past the point where the maintained path ended and the embankment began. She was in a power wheelchair, and she was moving. That was the thing that hit him first. She was moving forward. The chair inching toward the bank while she argued, one hand white-knuckled on the phone, and the other working the joystick without looking. The way people drove when they were somewhere else entirely in their heads. He knew that bank. He'd walked the full length of it when he took the job. He knew where the erosion was worst, where the ground had hollowed out underneath the surface grass so that it looked solid but wasn't, where the edge was 10 feet further back than it appeared. She was 6 inches from it, and still moving. Hey! The word came out of him like a shot. Hey! Stop! She didn't stop. She turned her head, turned it toward him with pure, weaponized irritation, the look of someone who had been interrupted mid-argument by a stranger shouting at them. The look of someone about to say, "Excuse me," in a tone that meant the opposite. And in that half-second of looking at him, her hand shifted on the joystick. The chair lurched forward. The front wheels hit the eroded edge, and the bank went. Not slowly, not the way you see in movies, the gradual crumble, the warning tremor. It went all at once, a whole section of undermined earth giving up simultaneously, and the chair went with it, pitching forward and sideways as the ground beneath it collapsed. And she went into the river at an angle that Ethan's stomach understood a full second before his brain did. He was already running. He didn't calculate the cold, didn't calculate anything. There was a person in the water, and the river was moving, and that was the only math that mattered. He hit the bank at the collapse point and went in feet first. The cold was a physical thing, not like temperature, like impact, like jumping onto concrete. It drove the air from his chest in a single involuntary grunt, and then it was everywhere, inside his clothes, in his ears, looking for every warm place he had and taking it. 40 degrees, maybe less. He surfaced, looked, found her. She'd been thrown partially clear of the chair on impact. The chair itself had sunk immediately, going down in 3 seconds flat, and she was in the water, fighting. That was the thing about her that he would remember later, when he had the distance to remember anything. She was fighting. Not panicking in the flailing, helpless way. Fighting it, with everything she had, which was her arms and her upper body, and a fury that the 40-degree water hadn't come close to extinguishing. But her legs were still, completely still. He understood then. He understood all at once, and it didn't slow him down. If anything, it focused him, narrowed everything to a single clear point. He reached her in 4 strokes. "I got you," he said, getting his arm across her chest, locking his grip. "Stop fighting. Lean back. I got you." "My chair." Her voice was already going ragged with cold, the words coming in pieces. "My chair." "Gone. Forget the chair. You with me?" She grabbed his arm. Both hands, a grip that was surprisingly, impressively strong. "Don't you dare let go," she said. "I won't." "I'm serious. Don't you dare." "Lady." He started moving them toward the bank, kicking hard, fighting the current. "I jumped in after you. I'm not letting go." She didn't say anything after that. She held on. It took 5 minutes to get to the low bank, 60 yards downstream. 5 minutes that felt like 50, with the cold doing what cold did, trying to negotiate with his muscles, trying to convince them that stopping was a reasonable option. He didn't negotiate. He kicked and pulled and kept his arm across her and kept moving. And she held on the whole time, without making a sound, which he later came to understand was one of the most characteristically Clare Monroe things she would ever do in his presence. He got them out. He lay on the frozen mud for a moment, breathing. She was beside him, flat on her back, her soaked clothes steaming faintly in the cold air, both of them staring at the gray November sky. "Breathe," he said. "I am breathing," she said. "Slower." A pause. "You're not a doctor." "No. I'm the man who just pulled you out of a river." Another pause. Longer. "Fair point," she said. The paramedics arrived 11 minutes later, which meant he had 11 minutes to keep her alive in a way that wasn't going to make the hypothermia worse. And he used all 11 of them. He got her to the truck, carrying her because there was no other option, and she didn't argue about it, which told him more about her condition than anything else. She was a small woman, actually. He hadn't registered that in the river. You didn't register size in the river. But carrying her, he noticed it. Small and cold and shaking with the specific violence of someone whose body was fighting very hard to stay warm. He got the heat going, both vents aimed at her. Got the emergency blanket around her. Got his dry flannel shirt over her wet blouse without asking permission, just doing it, and she let him. Reaching through the sleeves herself with shaking hands. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clare Monroe." Ethan Cole. He checked her pulse at her wrist. Strong. Fast, but strong. "Are you on any medications?" "Several." "Which ones?" She looked at him. "Are you actually medically trained?" "No, but I need to know if any of them are going to interact badly with the cold or with stress." Her jaw was chattering. She controlled it visibly, which was an act of will he found quietly remarkable. "Blood thinner, blood pressure, muscle, for the spasticity." She saw something in his face and added flatly, "Spinal cord injury. 6 years. I have function from the waist up. My legs are—" She stopped. "They're along for the ride." "Okay," he said. Just that. No expression change. No careful rearrangement of his face into something appropriate. No, "I'm so sorry," or "That must be so difficult." Just, "Okay," and then, "Any history of cardiac issues?" "No." Good. He reached for the thermos behind the seat, checked it, cold but not freezing, and handed it to her. "Drink this, slowly." "What is it?" "Coffee." "Is it good coffee?" "No." She took the thermos, drank, made a face. "You were right," she said. "Usually am about coffee." The faintest edge of something appeared at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile, not quite anything nameable. And then it was gone, and she was staring out through the windshield at the river path, at the gap in the bank where the ground had given up, and whatever was moving through her in that moment, she kept it completely to herself. The paramedics cleared her on sight, which she had clearly been prepared to insist upon regardless of what they said. She spoke to them in the calm, precise way of someone who knew exactly what was happening in her own body and had been advocating for herself in medical contexts for a very long time. Temperature, pulse, response time. She gave them numbers before they asked for them. When they left, it was quiet again. "Your wheelchair," Ethan said. "I know people. The city has a contract with—" "It's gone," she said, simply, like something that was true and didn't need emotion to make it more true. It went straight down. That model, in that current, in that silt, it's not recoverable. A pause. It cost $112,000. He absorbed that. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. That's what insurance is for." She looked at her hands, which were still faintly trembling. "I have a spare at the office. It's not as... It's different, but it's functional." "You need me to call someone? To drive you—" "My assistant." She said it the way you said, "Of course." The way you said a word that was just a piece of the furniture of your life. "Marcus is probably already—" She reached into the pocket of her wet coat, which he draped over the seat behind her, and came up with a phone that had somehow survived. She looked at it. 23 missed calls. She didn't react. Just looked at them the way you looked at a bill you'd been expecting. "He's going to be upset," she said. "Your assistant?" "He worries." She started to dial, then stopped, put the phone down in her lap, looked straight ahead for a moment. "I was on a call with my attorney when the bank—" She stopped again. "There is a vote happening Thursday. My board of directors are attempting to remove me from the company I founded." She said it with the flatness of someone who had said it out loud before, who had rehearsed the factual version because the emotional version was not an option. "I've spent the last 14 months fighting it. I have documentation. I have shareholder support. I have legal arguments that my attorney says are strong." A beat. "And this morning he called to tell me they found a procedural angle that may make all of it irrelevant." Ethan said nothing. Outside, the crow was back on the railing, watching them with small, bright eyes. "And then I fell in a river," Clare said. "And then you fell in a river," he agreed. She made a sound. It was brief and slightly broken, and it was, he realized, with some surprise, a laugh. Not a happy one. The kind of laugh that was the only shape left when everything else had been used up. "I built that company," she said. "I was 26 years old, and I had a business plan and a lease on a second-floor office above a dry cleaner. And I didn't sleep more than 4 hours a night for 3 years. I hired every single one of the first 100 people myself. I knew their names. I knew their families' names." She paused. "I still do." "How many employees now?" 2,300, roughly. She looked at him sideways. "You're not going to tell me that maybe it's time to let go? That things change? That I should consider this an opportunity?" "No." "Because people say that. People who've never built anything say that all the time." "I'm not going to say that," he said. "What you built is yours. And people who try to take what belongs to someone else deserve exactly as much fight as you can give them." She studied him for a moment with those gray eyes, a particular shade of gray, almost silver in the flat November light coming through the windshield. The kind of eyes that looked like they had been doing this a long time, looking at people and sorting them quickly and rarely being surprised. She seemed slightly surprised. "You fix railings," she said. "Mostly." "You said that like it was a complete sentence." "It is." She tilted her head, not dismissive, something else, considering. "What did you do before?" "Construction foreman." He picked up his coffee cup. Cold. He drank it anyway. "Had a crew of 12. Was going to go in with a partner on our own company." He stopped. "What happened?" He looked at the windshield, at the river path, at the gap in the bank. "My wife got sick," he said. "It took about a year. And then she was gone, and when I looked up, the job was gone too, and the plan, and—" He stopped again, shrugged once, the way you shrugged at something you'd made a kind of peace with, even though peace wasn't quite the right word. "So I use the tools. It's good work." Claire was quiet for a moment. "How long ago?" she said. 2 years, 9 months. "And you have a daughter?" "Mia. She's 8. He smiled before he knew he was smiling. "She's the reason for everything. Every morning, every job, all of it." He looked at the lunchbox sitting on the back seat, the purple one with the butterfly clasp. "She checks her lunch every morning to make sure I put a note on the napkin." Claire looked at the lunchbox. Something moved through her face. Not quite something he could name, something that was quick and private and gone before he could read it. "My mother used to do that," she said quietly. "Notes. In my lunch, in my backpack, once in my coat pocket in the middle of January, and I found it in February." A pause. "She died when I was 19. "I'm sorry." She would have thought this was extremely funny. Claire gestured at herself, soaked, wrapped in a flannel shirt and emergency mylar, sitting in a stranger's truck. She had a very dark sense of humor. "Sounds like someone I would have liked." Most people did. She said it simply, without performance. She was one of those people. They sat with that for a moment. Outside, a delivery truck went by on Riverside Drive. Normal world. Normal Friday morning. Somewhere, Mia was in class, probably making her teacher explain something twice because she didn't accept an answer she didn't fully understand. Somewhere, 2,300 people were going to work at a company they didn't fully understand was fighting for its life. "What's your daughter's name?" Ethan asked. You said her name was... You said..." He stopped, because he'd made an assumption. Just like that, just from the way she'd talked about her mother. "I don't have children," Claire said, without apology, without the complicated social noise people sometimes put around that statement. Just fact. "I have a company. I have Marcus, who is 27 and acts like my anxious older brother, and I have a very expensive chair currently at the bottom of the Millfield River, and I have..." She stopped, looked at her hands. "I had a fiancé. Until September." "What happened in September?" "He told me I worked too much." She said it with a stillness that was worse than bitterness would have been. "He said, and I remember the exact words, 'Claire, you love that company more than you love me. And I—'" She stopped. Her jaw tightened. "I didn't argue with him." "Because he was wrong, and it wasn't worth arguing?" "Because I was afraid he was right." She looked up at Ethan then, direct, unguarded in a way that he suspected she almost never was. The kind of unguarded that the cold and the river and the 11 minutes in the back of a stranger's truck had unlocked without her permission. "And if he was right, I didn't know what that made me." Ethan put his cup down. He looked at this woman, soaked and shaking and arguing with her own life out loud at 10 in the morning in a work truck in Riverside Park. And he thought about something Emma had said to him once, in the early days when they were still figuring each other out. "The loneliest thing isn't being alone," she'd said. "It's being the only one in the room who knows exactly how much you're holding." He'd thought about that 100 times since she died. Maybe more. "It makes you someone who cares about what you built," he said. "That's not a character flaw. People who've never built anything like to pretend it is." He paused. "And for what it's worth, I don't think you love the company more than you loved him. I think you love it differently. One kind of love doesn't cancel another out." Claire looked at him for a long moment. "You don't know me," she said. "No. You've known me for..." She checked her phone. 40 minutes. 40 minutes and 1 river rescue. That counts for something. And this time, what appeared at the corner of her mouth stayed there a little longer. Not a full smile. Not yet. But the shape of one. The early architecture of one. It counts for something, she agreed. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. Marcus. In all caps, the way you'd name a contact if they called you in emergencies. I have to, she started. Take it. I need to call the city about the bank collapse anyway. She answered the phone, and the voice that came through, loud enough that Ethan could hear fragments, was young and urgent, and did in fact sound like an anxious older brother. She talked him down in 3 sentences, flat and calm, the authority back in her voice like she'd put on a different coat. I'm fine. I had an incident at Riverside Park. I need the backup chair and a change of clothes. Yes, the backup. Marcus, I said I'm fine. Ethan stepped out of the truck to make his own calls. The cold hit him again without the adrenaline to buffer it, and he stood there for a moment in his wet clothes, watching his breath steam, feeling the ache in his arms from the swim and the carry, and the 5 minutes of fighting a river with everything he had. He was 44 years old. His knees hurt. His lower back had been giving him trouble since August. He drove a truck with 160,000 miles on it, and he packed an 8-year-old's lunch at 5 in the morning, and he'd been telling himself for 2 years and 9 months that the room in the back of his chest was going to stay closed forever. And that was fine. That was the deal. That was what he'd decided. He looked back through the windshield. Clare Monroe was sitting in his passenger seat, wrapped in his flannel shirt, talking into her phone with the focused intensity of someone who had nearly drowned 40 minutes ago, and was already, somehow, conducting business. And the room in the back of his chest, the one with the lock on it, the one with Emma's name in it, the one he'd closed and called closed and meant to keep closed forever. He felt it, just slightly. Shift, just slightly. Like something in the dark deciding to listen. Marcus arrived in 19 minutes. Ethan knew because he counted, not intentionally, just the way his brain worked, always measuring, always keeping track of things that needed tracking. And in those 19 minutes, he sat on the tailgate of his truck in wet clothes in the November cold and made 3 phone calls. One to the city maintenance office about the bank collapse, one to Mrs. Donnelly, who took the news that he was running behind with the gracious patience of someone who had been rescheduling this porch job for 2 months anyway. And one to nobody, because the third call he started to dial was the one he always almost made in moments like this. The one to Emma's number, which he'd never deleted, which still rang twice and went to her voicemail, where she said, "Hey, you've reached Emma Cole. Leave me something good." And he caught himself 3 digits in and put the phone away. He did that sometime still. Started to call her. His hands remembered her number before his brain could stop them. He sat with that for a moment, and then he heard a car door. The man who got out of the black Audi was 27 at most, tall, with the kind of face that was currently doing too many things at once. Relief, residual panic, professional composure, and something that was just plain worry, the personal kind that didn't have anything to do with job titles. He had Claire's spare wheelchair folded in the back seat and a garment bag over one arm, and he was moving toward the truck at a pace just below a run. "Claire!" He pulled open the passenger door and just stood there for a second, taking her in. The flannel shirt, the emergency blanket, the wet hair. "Oh my God!" "I'm fine, Marcus." "You're not fine. You're wearing someone else's shirt." "It's warm." "Your lips were blue when you called me." "They're not blue now." She reached out and touched his arm. Once. Brief. The way you touched someone to stop them from spinning. "I'm okay, I promise. I need you to help me change, and then I need the chair set up And then nothing. He set the garment bag on the seat beside her and turned to look at Ethan with an expression that was simultaneously grateful and slightly overwhelmed. "You're him? You pulled her out?" "Ethan Cole." He held out his hand. Marcus shook it, held it a beat longer than a handshake required. "Marcus Webb. Thank you." He said it the way people said things they meant completely and couldn't find bigger words for. "Seriously. Thank you." "She did most of the work," Ethan said. From inside the truck, "I absolutely did not." "She stayed calm. That matters." Marcus looked back at Claire with an expression that said he was filing this away, this evidence of her staying calm in a 40-degree river, to be produced later as proof of something. "She does that," he said quietly. "It's terrifying." Ethan gave them privacy to get Claire changed and the chair set up. He stood at the river's edge, well back from it, from the broken bank, from the raw gash in the earth where the ground had given up, and looked at the water. The current moved the way it always moved, indifferent. The river didn't know what it had almost taken. Rivers never did. He thought about her face when she'd looked at him from the water. Not the panic. Before the panic, in that half-second before the bank went, when she'd turned to look at him with that expression of interrupted fury. There had been something alive in her eyes that the cold hadn't touched, not even for a minute. He'd seen a lot of people in bad situations. He'd seen people go flat, go distant, let the emergency make their decisions for them. Clare Monroe had not done that. Not for a single second. He heard the wheelchair's motor behind him and turned around. She was herself again. Or the version of herself that was dressed and upright and arranged for the world. Dark slacks, a cream blouse that Marcus had produced from the garment bag with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. Her hair still damp but pulled back with the practiced ease of a woman who had been making do with what she had her entire life. The backup wheelchair was smaller than he imagined the other one had been, less customized, but she sat in it the same way, like it was an extension of herself rather than something that was happening to her. She looked at Ethan, and he looked at her, and there was a beat of something. Not awkward, actually, which was the surprising part. Just the specific silence of two people who had shared something real and were now stepping back into the regular world where that kind of sharing wasn't the norm. "Your shirt," she said, and held it out, folded. "Keep it." "I'm not keeping your shirt." "You're going to be cold on the drive." "I have a blouse." "It's November." She looked at the shirt, looked at him. "I'll have it cleaned and returned." "You really don't need to." "Ethan." She said his name like she'd been using it for years. "I will have it cleaned and returned. That is not negotiable." She paused. "Also, I owe you." "You don't owe me anything." "A chair," she said. "You lost time. You were working. The city job." "I'll rebook it." "I'm going to pay you for the day." "Claire." He said her name the same way she'd said his. Flat, quiet, with a kind of evenness that meant this conversation is over. "You were in the river. I helped. That's the whole transaction." She studied him for a long moment. Marcus was standing slightly behind her, pretending to look at his phone. "You're very stubborn," she said. "So are you. It takes one to know one." And there it was again, that almost smile. Quicker this time, more controlled, but real. He was starting to understand that the smile was the tell. Everything else about her was managed, rehearsed, the product of years of being a woman in rooms where she had to work twice as hard to be heard. But the smile broke through the management, and when it did, it meant something. Marcus cleared his throat. "We should—" "Yes," Claire said. She moved the chair forward slightly, toward Ethan, and she held out her hand. "Thank you. I mean that without any condition or qualification. Thank you." He shook her hand. Her grip was strong. Of course it was. "Take care of yourself," he said. "I'll do my best." She started to turn, then stopped. "And Ethan, I know you said no, but—" She reached into the small bag on the side of the chair and came out with a card. White card, clean type, just her name and a number. She held it out. "If you ever need anything at all." He took the card because refusing it a second time felt like arguing with a river. He watched the Audi pull out of the gravel lot and disappear onto Riverside Drive. And then he turned back to the broken embankment and his tools and the 60 feet of railing that still needed fixing. And he went back to work. He didn't look at the card again until he was home that night, cleaning out his jacket pockets at the kitchen sink. He set it on the counter. He looked at it for a while. Then he put it in the drawer, the one next to the stove where he kept the takeout menus and the Mia-related paperwork and the things he wasn't ready to decide about yet. And he went to pick up his daughter. Mia knew something had happened before he told her. That was her way. Emma had been the same. That particular attention to the quality of his silence. The ability to read the specific texture of how he was holding himself. Mia had inherited it completely, along with the eyes and the thing with the apple slices and the stubbornness. And sometimes he found himself grateful for it, and sometimes it undid him, depending on the day. "What happened?" she said, from the back seat, still in her backpack. "I had an interesting day," he said. "Dad?" "What?" "You're doing the thing." "What thing?" "The thing where you say fine when you mean not fine." She leaned forward as far as the seatbelt allowed. "What happened?" He told her the short version. Woman at the river, bank gave out, he helped. Mia was quiet for a moment. "You went in the water." "I did." "I told you not to fall in." "I didn't fall in. I jumped in. There's a difference." "There isn't." "There really is." He glanced in the rearview mirror and caught her eyes. Emma's eyes, watching him with that specific blend of worry and exasperation. "She's okay, Mia. She's fine. I'm fine. Everybody's fine." "Was she scared?" He thought about it. "I think she was. She didn't show it, but—" He paused. "Yeah, I think she was." Mia absorbed this with the seriousness she brought to most things. "Is she nice?" "She's—" He thought about the 40 minutes in the truck. The way she'd said her mother used to put notes in her lunch. The way she'd talked about her company, those 2,300 people, the ones she'd hired herself, whose names she still knew. "Yeah, she's nice, in a particular way." "What kind of particular way?" "The kind that takes a little time to see." Mia considered this for the rest of the drive home, which was her version of filing it away. She was 8, but she processed things the way adults sometimes didn't. Slowly, completely, turning them over until she knew them from every angle. At dinner, she said, "Is she going to be okay? The lady?" "I think so." "Did she have anyone to take care of her?" Ethan looked at his daughter across the kitchen table. "She had someone who came to pick her up, her assistant." "That's not the same as having someone," Mia said. He didn't have an answer for that. So he just said, "Eat your broccoli." And she gave him the look that meant she knew he was deflecting, but she picked up her fork anyway. He thought about it later, after she was in bed, after the house had gone quiet, and he was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee he wasn't really drinking. That's not the same as having someone. 8 years old, and she understood that. He wondered how much of that understanding was instinct, and how much of it was having grown up in a house with a particular shape of absence in it, the shape that was Emma's shape, the space that things slid around in without filling. He opened the drawer next to the stove and looked at the card for a while. Then he closed the drawer and went to bed. He didn't call. But on Wednesday, the city maintenance supervisor called him about the bank collapse report, and in the course of that conversation mentioned that there had been an inquiry, formal, specific, from someone's office about the status of the railing job and the timeline for the embankment repair. When Ethan asked which office, the supervisor checked his email and said, "Quantum Solutions, woman named Monroe." Ethan stood in Mrs. Donnelly's driveway with his phone to his ear and said, "Okay, thank you, Gerald." He fixed the porch steps. He drove to Riverside Park and rerouted the path, put up the temporary fencing around the collapse point, documented everything for the city. He ate his lunch in the truck, watching two ducks argue about something at the river's edge, and he thought about nothing in particular and everything in general. Thursday came. He knew it was the board vote day because she'd told him that morning in the truck, Thursday, and he'd held on to the word without meaning to, the way you held on to specific details when a conversation had been unexpectedly important. He thought about her when he woke up at 4:47. He thought about her when he packed Mia's lunch. He thought, briefly and with a kind of uncomfortable clarity, about the room in the back of his chest, the one that had shifted just slightly, and the fact that he had now thought about Clare Monroe on 4 consecutive mornings, which was more mornings in a row than he'd thought about anything other than Mia and work and Emma since Emma died. He opened the drawer, picked up the card. He put it back. Then he took it out again and sent a text, because a text was not a phone call. A text was a small thing. A text didn't mean anything except, "I thought about you on Thursday morning because Thursday was the vote, and I hope it went the way you needed it to go." He typed, "It's Ethan Cole. Hope Thursday went okay." He stared at it for a long time. Then he sent it. He was at a job in Maplewood, up on a ladder replacing rotted fascia boards, when his phone buzzed. He climbed down. "Read it." It didn't. "But I'm still here. CM." He stood at the bottom of the ladder with the phone in his hand, and something tightened in his chest for her. Not pity. Something different. Something that was more like recognition. Like one person who knew what it felt like to lose something irreplaceable, seeing that knowledge in someone else. He typed, "I'm sorry. That's a real loss, and you're allowed to feel it." Then he climbed back up the ladder and went back to work. 3 minutes later, his phone buzzed again. "Nobody has said that to me today. Everyone keeps saying it's a setback, not a defeat. Like I need the vocabulary corrected." He was smiling before he'd finished reading it. He replied, "Sounds exhausting. You have no idea." He thought about that all afternoon. She called on Friday evening. He was in the driveway, helping Mia with her bike. She'd decided, at 8 3/4, that training wheels were a humiliation she was no longer willing to tolerate, which meant he'd spent the last hour running alongside her across the driveway and into the yard and back while she argued with gravity. His phone rang and he caught it one-handed while Mia executed a semi-successful left turn. "Claire?" "Yes?" A pause. "Is this a bad time?" "I'm teaching my daughter to ride a bike." "Oh." Another pause. "I can—" "No, it's fine. She's doing well." He watched Mia pedal across the yard with aggressive confidence.
"What's going on?" "I don't—" She stopped, started again. He could hear something in her voice that hadn't been there in the truck, not even in the river. A roughness, a rawness, the specific sound of someone who had been holding something tightly for too long and was feeling their grip go. "I don't actually know why I called you. I've been sitting here for an hour trying to figure out who to call, and She stopped again. "That sounds pathetic." It doesn't. I have Marcus, but he spent the whole day. He was at the vote. He watched it happen. And I can see on his face every time I look at him that he's angry on my behalf. And right now I need someone who is not angry on my behalf. Ethan sat down on the driveway curb. What do you need? I don't know. Someone to just talk. Just not about the vote, not about strategy, not about what comes next. She exhaled. Is that strange, given that we've met once? We've met once and been in a river together. That counts as twice.
She almost laughed. Close, he heard the almost. How did the bike lesson go? She said. She's currently heading toward the rose bush at full speed. Is that bad? It's about to be. He stood up. Mia, left. There was a crash. Not a serious one. The sound of a bike on soft ground and a child's laughter that meant, I did that on purpose, rather than, I am injured. Dad, Mia's voice. Did you see that? Which part? The turn or the bush? The turn. I did the turn. She got the bike upright with the matter-of-fact efficiency of someone for whom falling was just a phase of the process, and pedaled back toward him. Who are you talking to? A friend. Mia gave the phone a considering look, the way she gave most things a considering look. What friend? A new friend. What's their name? He almost said, none of your business, which was what you said when you wanted to get out of the question without answering it. Instead, he said, Claire. He could hear, very faintly, through the phone, Claire's voice, quiet and private, saying almost to herself, She wants to know who you're talking to. She does, Ethan said. Tell her. Claire paused. He could hear her trying to figure out what to say. The woman who gave press conferences and ran board meetings and directed 2,300 people. And she couldn't figure out what to say to an 8-year-old through a phone in a driveway. Tell her the turn sounded very good. He looked at Mia. She says the turn sounded very good. Mia considered this with great seriousness. She heard it? She heard it. Mia nodded, satisfied, and turned the bike around and pedaled toward the far end of the driveway, already trying again. Ethan put the phone back to his ear. You still there? I'm here. Claire's voice had changed. The rawness was still there, but something had shifted around it. Something quieter, less like the sharp edge of a thing just broken, and more like the dull ache of something that had been breaking for a while, and had finally finished. She sounds brave. She is, aggressively so. That's the best kind of brave. He watched Mia make the turn again, better this time, clean, and something that he felt every day, this particular texture of gratitude and grief together, moved through him. Yeah, he said. It is. They talked for 50 minutes, not about the vote, true to her word, not about the company, not about the board, not about what came next. She asked him about the Riverside Park job, and he told her about it, about the railing reset and the city contracts, and the way he'd started building the handyman business from nothing after Emma died. One job at a time, one referral at a time. She asked him how he'd learned to be a foreman, and he told her about the first construction job he'd had at 22, working for a man named Bill Kearney, who believed that the only way to learn the work was to do every part of it yourself, that you couldn't supervise a job you didn't understand with your hands. She said, I believe that. I answered every phone in that office for the first 3 months, every single one. So I understood what the people answering phones were dealing with. How many people answer phones at Quantum now? I'd have to check. More than 12. She paused. I know all their names. I know you do, he said. He didn't know why he said it the way he said it, the certainty in it, the quiet confidence. But she heard it. He could tell she heard it, the way she went briefly still on the other end. "Ethan," she said. "Yeah." A pause. "Thank you for answering." "You can call," he said. "Whenever. It's fine." He heard her breathe, just once, quietly, like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and had just, for a single moment, been allowed to set it down. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Claire." He sat on the driveway curb for another minute after she hung up, listening to the sound of Mia's bike on the pavement, the clean, regular rhythm of wheels going forward. And he held his phone in both hands and felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years and 9 months. Not the dramatic thing, not the loud thing, nothing that announced itself or asked for anything. Just the quiet, cellular recognition that someone else in the world was real to him now, present in the way that specific people became present when something true had passed between you. He hadn't sought it, hadn't planned for it, but there it was, the way certain things were. Not asked for, but undeniably, quietly there. Inside the house, the kitchen light buzzed. He'd been meaning to replace that bulb for 4 weeks. He put his phone in his pocket and went inside. And for the first time in 4 weeks, he changed the bulb. The calls became a thing. Not a scheduled thing, not something they discussed or agreed to. Just a thing that happened. The way certain things happen between certain people. Organically and without announcement. Tuesday night, she called while he was grading Mia's math homework, which Mia was doing wrong on purpose, to see how long it took him to notice. Thursday night, he called her, which surprised him more than it seemed to surprise her. Saturday afternoon, she called mid-errand, and they talked for 20 minutes while he stood in the hardware store aisle holding a box of wood screws, and the guy restocking the shelf next to him gave him the look that meant, "You've been standing there a while, brother." He didn't notice. That was the thing he kept coming back to. He didn't notice the time passing when he was talking to her. It had been 3 weeks since the river. She was working from home, or what she called home, which was a corporate apartment downtown that she'd taken after leaving the house she and the fiancé had shared. She said the apartment like it was temporary, like it was a waiting room, which he thought said something about where her head was and what she was hoping for, though he didn't say that out loud. She was fighting back. He'd known she would. The board vote had gone through, technically, but there were procedural challenges and shareholder coalition discussions and things he only partially understood. But what he understood clearly was that Clare Monroe did not stop. She adapted. She found the next angle, the next argument, the next path through. She'd been doing it since she was 26 years old, above a dry cleaner, and she was not going to stop now because 3 people with a procedural angle had decided they knew better than she did what to do with the thing she'd built. "You're doing better," he said, on a Thursday night, about 2 weeks in. "I don't know about better," she said. "I'm doing differently." "What's the difference?" "Better implies something was wrong with how I was before. Differently just means I'm finding new angles." A pause. "My therapist says I'm deflecting." "Are you?" "Probably." She didn't sound bothered by this. "I've been deflecting since I was 19. I'm very good at it." What would not deflecting look like? Silence. Not uncomfortable. He'd learned her silences by now, learned to tell the difference between the ones that meant she was done with the topic and the ones that meant she was actually thinking. This was the second kind. "It would look like me telling you that I cried in my car on Thursday after the vote," she said, "for about 20 minutes. Then I fixed my makeup and called Marcus and went back to work." He didn't say anything right away, because the right response wasn't a word. It was just the space of being told something and receiving it without flinching. "That's not deflecting," he said. "That's just surviving." "You're very easy to talk to," she said. "Has anyone told you that?" My daughter. Occasionally.
Smart kid.
Terrifyingly so. He heard her smile. He could do that now. Hear the shape of it in her voice. The slight shift in register. The fraction of warmth that broke through the composure. He'd cataloged it without meaning to. That was the thing about paying attention to someone. You started to know them in small, specific ways. The ways that mattered more than the big, general ones.
How is she? Claire asked. Mia.
She made a friend at school. A girl named Becca who has apparently elevated the concept of friendship to an art form, based on the daily reports I receive. Claire laughed. A real one, not the almost laugh he'd gotten early on. He'd earned the real ones somewhere around day 10. He wasn't sure exactly when, but they had come, and they were worth the wait. She told me about you, he said. Silence. The first kind, this time. Brief. Surprised.
What?
Mia. She asked about you again. I told her we'd been talking and... He paused. She said to tell you that she landed the left turn clean. He heard something come through the line that was quiet and quick and private.
She remembered that I said that?
She remembers everything. It's her least convenient quality, and her best one. Another silence. This one different from both the other kinds. Softer, slower. The specific quality of silence that a person made when something had touched them in a place they weren't expecting to be touched.
You should bring her by sometime, Claire said.
Her voice was careful.
The office has a...
She stopped. Started again.
I have an aquarium in my office. It was actually Marcus's idea. For stress.
Mia sounds like she'd have opinions about it. She has opinions about everything. Then she'd fit right in. He smiled, held the phone. Outside, the first snow of the season was coming down. The small, dry kind that didn't stick, just fell and disappeared. He'd been watching it through the kitchen window for the last hour while Mia slept. Claire, he said.
Yeah?
I want to see you. He said it the way he'd said things lately, without overthinking it, without running it through the filter first. Because the filter had been offline for about a week, and he was beginning to suspect it was not coming back. Not the phone. Actually see you. The pause that followed was 3 seconds long. He counted.
Okay, she said. Yes, okay.
They met at a coffee place on Meridian Street that she suggested, a corner spot with good parking and low ambient noise. He noticed, the second time he thought about it, that the parking and the low noise weren't incidental. They were practical. The kind of considerations that were permanently part of how she moved through the world. He'd gotten there first and pushed 2 tables together without asking the staff because the standard spacing wasn't going to work. And when Claire came through the door and saw that he'd already done it, without being asked, without making anything of it, she stopped for just a moment before she moved toward him.
You were early, she said.
I'm always early. It's a problem.
It's not a problem.
She maneuvered to the table with the practiced ease of someone for whom this was simply Tuesday. And she looked at him across the small space, and he looked at her. And there was a beat of something. The specific recalibration that happened when a person you'd only known through a phone suddenly occupied 3 dimensions. She was, in person, more herself than she'd been in the truck. That was the only way he could explain it. Like the phone had given him the outline, and the in-person was the full thing. She was wearing a dark green sweater, and she looked like someone who hadn't been sleeping quite enough, which he recognized because he often looked like that himself. You look tired, he said.
That's a terrible thing to say.
I'm not saying it as a criticism.
How are you saying it?
As an observation from someone who also doesn't sleep enough and recognizes the signs. She looked at him for a moment. I've been up since 4 most days. Shareholder calls.
Different time zones. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. Also, my brain won't stop.
I know that thing.
I know you do. She said it simply, like she'd thought about him in similar terms, in the way you thought about someone whose situation you'd actually considered, turned over, paid attention to. The recognition of that moved through him quietly. They talked for 2 hours. He told her about the crew he was putting together for a bigger project in the spring. A commercial renovation on the east side that was the biggest contract he'd ever bid on. He told her about the night Emma was diagnosed, how they'd sat in the hospital parking lot for 45 minutes before driving home because neither of them could figure out how to start the car. She told him about the year she'd spent after the accident. The spinal cord injury at 31, a car accident on a Tuesday morning, the kind of ordinary Tuesday that wasn't supposed to contain anything larger than coffee and a 9 o'clock meeting, and how she'd spent 12 months learning to want things again. The worst part wasn't the physical part, she said. Don't get me wrong, the physical part was, she exhaled. But the worst part was the way people looked at me afterward. Like I had become smaller. Like what I was capable of had been revised. Did they say that? Nobody said it. That's the thing about that particular kind of diminishment. Nobody says it. They just rearrange their expectations without telling you. She looked at him. And you spend a year fighting not the injury, but the rearrangement. Is that when you built the company? I started building it 3 months after I got out of rehab. She said it with a quiet pride that wasn't bragging. It was just the truth of what she'd done, stated plainly. I needed to prove something, to myself first, and to everyone who'd quietly revised what they thought I could do. Did it work? She considered. 2,300 people, 140 million in annual revenue. She paused. Yeah, it worked. He was quiet for a moment, looking at this woman across the table. The one who'd rebuilt herself from the inside out, who answered every phone in her own office so she'd know what the work was, who cried for 20 minutes after the board vote and then fixed her makeup and went back in. He was quiet, and he was feeling something that he'd been carefully not naming for 2 weeks, because naming it felt like an action, and actions had consequences, and consequences had a small daughter in them, who came first, always, full stop. But the feeling didn't wait for him to name it. It just sat there, present and patient, the way true things tended to be. I need to tell you something, Claire said. He looked at her. Her hands were flat on the table. She was looking at them, then at him, with an expression he hadn't seen on her face before. Not the composed version, not the tired version, not the almost smiling version. Something more stripped down than any of those. I'm aware, she said, carefully, like she was choosing every word from a line of words and rejecting the ones that weren't precise enough. That we are... She stopped. I'm not good at this. I'm very good at boardrooms, and I'm very good at arguments, and I'm not good at this. At what? She looked up. At telling someone that I think about them, specifically, in the way that is not just... She stopped again. Her jaw tightened. He'd seen that before. Her shutting down the emotional version and reaching for the factual one, because the factual one was safer. I'm falling for you, she said, flat, clear, a fact stated the way she stated facts, without decoration, without apology. I am aware that there are complications, and that you have Mia, and that I have a company situation, and that we have known each other for 3 weeks. I'm aware of all of that. I'm not asking you for anything. I needed to say it out loud to someone, and that someone is you. The coffee shop made its coffee shop sounds around them. The machine, the low conversation,
the door opening and closing. Normal world. Normal Friday afternoon.
Ethan looked at Clare Monroe across the table, and he felt everything that he felt. The recognition, the pull, the thing that had been quietly there for 2 weeks. And he also felt Mia pedaling across the driveway, and Emma's voice on a voicemail he still hadn't deleted, and the room in his chest with the lock on it. And all of it was present simultaneously, not canceling each other out, just all true at once. "I hear you," he said. "Okay." "And He stopped, breathed. "I'm not going to pretend I don't know what you're talking about, because I do." He held her gaze. "But I have a daughter who has already lost one person who mattered to her. And before anything else, I need to know that whatever happens next doesn't cost her." Claire nodded, once. "That's the right answer," she said quietly. "It's not an answer. It's a condition. It's both." She looked at him with something that was close to the kind of respect that didn't get given easily. The kind earned. "I wouldn't want it any other way." He reached across the table and put his hand over hers. Briefly. Just a moment. Just the weight of a hand saying, "I heard you. I'm here. This is real." And then he took it back. "Slow," he said. "Slow," she agreed. And outside, the dry snow kept falling, disappearing the moment it hit the ground, leaving no trace. Just the knowledge that it had been there, that it had fallen, that the air between things had changed in ways that couldn't quite be seen, but were, undeniably, felt. Slow turned out to be harder than either of them had made it sound. Not because they rushed it. They didn't. Ethan was deliberate about it, in the way he was deliberate about everything that mattered. Measured. Careful. Paying attention. 2 more coffee shop afternoons. One Sunday, when Claire drove out to Riverside Park with Marcus and watched Ethan finish the last section of the railing job, and they ate sandwiches on the tailgate of his truck in 35-degree weather, and talked about nothing important for 2 hours, which was, he was learning, one of the better things you could do with another person. The easiness of it. The nothing important of it. Mia didn't know Claire was there that Sunday. He hadn't planned it that way. He hadn't planned it at all, which was maybe the problem. Claire had called to say she was in the area, which he now understood meant she'd driven 20 minutes out of her way because she'd wanted to see him. And he'd said, "Come by the job." And she had, and it had been good. And he'd driven home afterward feeling the particular warmth of a day that had been better than expected. And then Mia had said, at dinner, "Were you with Claire today?" He'd stopped with his fork halfway to his mouth. "Why do you ask?" "Becca's mom saw your truck at the park. She said there was a woman in a wheelchair." He set the fork down. "Yeah, she came by the job for a little while." Mia looked at her plate. She pushed a piece of carrot around with absolute focus, the way she focused on things when she was thinking hard and didn't want you to see it. "Mia." "What?" "You can ask me whatever you want to ask me." She looked up. Her eyes, Emma's eyes, were doing the complicated thing, the thing where several feelings were happening simultaneously, and none of them had sorted themselves out yet. "Do you like her?" He held her gaze. He'd promised himself, the day Emma died, that he would never lie to his daughter about anything that mattered. Small things, sure. The tooth fairy, Santa Claus, the idea that broccoli tasted good if you ate it fast. But not the things that mattered. "I do," he said. "As a friend." "Just a friend?" "Right now, yeah." Mia looked at the carrot. "Becca's mom said she's very pretty." "Becca's mom needs to find a new hobby." The corner of Mia's mouth twitched to spite herself, and then was serious again. "Is she going to come here? To our house?" "I don't know yet.
Would that be okay? The silence that followed was the longest kind. The kind that had weight to it. That meant something real was happening inside his daughter, that she was trying to find the right container for. He waited. He was good at waiting. Emma had taught him that, early in their marriage, when he'd been a fixer, a problem solver, a man who rushed to fill silence because silence felt like a problem to be solved. Emma had taught him that some silences needed to be sat in, not solved. "I don't know," Mia said finally. She said it honestly, which was more than most adults managed. "I don't know if it's okay yet." "That's a fair answer," he said. She looked at him. "She's not going to be my mom." "No." "Nobody is." "Nobody is," he agreed.
That's not what this is. Then what is it? He thought about it. He thought about Claire's hands flat on the coffee shop table. Her voice stripped of everything managed, saying, "I'm falling for you," like a fact she'd been holding at arm's length and had finally just put down. He thought about the 50-minute phone call and the hardware store, and the way she heard the quality of the snow in his voice on a Tuesday night and said, "You sound tired. Go to sleep. I mean it." "It's a new thing," he said. "Not a replacement for anything, just its own thing. New." Mia turned this over. She was quiet through the rest of dinner, and through her bath, and through the 20 minutes of reading before bed that was their nightly ritual. The thing they'd never negotiated or discussed, just always done. He read her 2 chapters of the book they were working through. The one about the girl who discovers her grandmother was a spy, which Mia had chosen with the same decisive gravity she brought to all important selections. And when he closed it, she was looking at the ceiling with her thinking face on. "Dad." "Yeah." "Does she know about Mom?" "She does." "Everything?" "The important things." Mia was quiet again. Then, "Does she know that Mom used to do the note thing too? The lunch note?" He blinked. "Actually, yeah, I told her that." Something shifted in Mia's face that he couldn't fully read. Not anger. Something more complicated, more layered. "Okay," she said. Just that. Then she rolled onto her side and pulled the comforter up. He turned off the lamp. He stood in the doorway for a moment, the way he always stood in the doorway before going downstairs, listening to her breathe. "Dad?" "Still here." "I'm not saying no," she said. "I'm just not saying yes." "I know, bud. That's okay." "Okay." A pause. "Good night." "Good night." He went downstairs and sat at the kitchen table for a long time, not making coffee, not doing anything, just sitting with it. The weight of raising a child who felt things deeply and processed them honestly and deserved more careful handling than almost anything else in his world. He texted Claire, "Mia knows about you. Not a crisis, just something I need to navigate carefully." She replied within 2 minutes, "Of course, take whatever time you need. I mean that completely." Then 10 seconds later, "Is she okay?" He looked at that second text for a while. The fact that it came separately. The fact that it came at all. "She's okay," he typed back. "She's a lot like her mom. Feels everything and thinks about it hard." "That sounds like someone worth knowing," Claire replied. "Yeah," he wrote. "She is." The town had opinions, which was neither surprising nor convenient. Millfield was the particular size of town where everyone knew everyone's business, without it being a secret that they knew. It operated on a social frequency that was part genuine community and part something else. The low-grade hum of people monitoring the lives around them, not always with malice, often with real warmth, but with an attentiveness that left very little room for privacy.
Ethan had known this. He'd grown up here, left for construction work in the city, come back when Emma got sick, because this was where her family was, and where the pace was slower, and where Mia would have a yard. He'd been back 6 years. He knew how it worked, so he wasn't exactly surprised when Dave Kowalski, whose hardware store Ethan had been going to for 20 years, said over the counter on a Wednesday morning, "Heard you've been spending time with that Monroe woman, the CEO." Ethan picked up his bag of supplies. "Word travels. Small town, you know." Dave leaned on the counter. He wasn't a bad man. Ethan had known him since junior high, had stood with him at his mother's funeral, had helped him put on a new roof in 2019. He wasn't saying it with malice. He was saying it with a particular brand of concerned disapproval that the town deployed when it felt protective. "She's not from here, Ethan. Different world." "I know what world she's from. I'm just saying, you've got Mia to think about." "I think about Mia every minute of every day. That's not a thing I need reminding of." He said it without heat, which was harder than saying it with heat. "Thanks for the supplies, Dave." He heard the door close behind him and stood in the parking lot and breathed for a moment. The thing about small towns was that the protectiveness was real. Dave genuinely believed he was looking out for Ethan. That was the part that made it complicated, that you couldn't just be angry at it, because it wasn't coming from nowhere. But it still landed wrong. He called Claire that afternoon and told her. She was quiet for a beat. "Different world," she repeated. His words. "Is he wrong?" "About the worlds, no. About whether that matters." He stopped. "I don't think the distance between two people's worlds is a fixed thing. I think it depends on whether they're willing to walk toward each other." Claire was quiet for a moment. "That might be the most honest thing anyone has said to me in the past year." She paused. "What did you say to him?" "I told him I think about Mia every minute of every day." "That's enough," she said. "That's the whole answer." But he heard something underneath her voice, the thing she wasn't saying, which was that she'd heard this before, in different forms, from different people. The fiancé who said she worked too much. The board members who thought they knew better. The people who looked at her after the accident and quietly revised their expectations. She'd been building things her whole life against the weight of people who thought the distance was fixed, who thought the worlds didn't move. He wanted to say that to her. He nearly did. Instead he said, "How's the shareholder situation?" "Moving, slowly, in the right direction." She paused. "I had a call with Patterson this morning. He's persuadable." "That sounds like progress." "It sounds like Tuesday," she said. "Progress is what it looks like in retrospect." The aquarium visit was Mia's idea. He hadn't pushed it. He'd mentioned, casually, once, that Claire had an aquarium in her office, and Mia had filed it away in the way she filed things away, and 3 weeks later she looked up from her homework and said, "I want to see the fish." Ethan looked at her over his coffee. "Claire's fish? If it's a real aquarium, it has more than fish. It probably has anemones." "Does it?" "Sea anemones and clownfish are symbiotic. The fish protects the anemone, and the anemone protects the fish." She said it with the authority of someone who had recently done significant independent research. It's mutually beneficial. He texted Claire. "Mia wants to see your aquarium. She has opinions about symbiotic relationships." Claire replied, "Saturday morning? Marcus will be here, and I'll have the good coffee. Tell her I looked it up. There are 2 clownfish. She's going to want their names. Their names are Accounting and Legal. Marcus named them. Don't ask." He showed Mia the texts. She read them twice with great seriousness and said, "Those are good names," and went back to her homework. Saturday arrived with the particular clarity of a cold December morning, where the sky was that deep, specific blue that meant hard frost and bright sun and no clouds. Ethan drove Mia downtown, and she sat in the back seat without talking, which meant she was thinking hard, which meant she was more nervous than she was going to admit.
"You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine." "You've been quiet." "I'm thinking."
"About what?" A pause.
"About what to say."
"You don't have to say anything specific. Just be yourself."
"I'm always myself," she said with some dignity. "I'm thinking about what to say in addition to being myself."
He parked. They rode the elevator to the 14th floor, which Mia examined with a focused interest of someone noting details for a report. Marcus met them at the reception desk, young, warm, visibly glad to see them in a way that made Ethan like him immediately. And he walked them back through the open office to Claire's corner. Claire was at her desk when they came in, on a call, but she looked up and held up one finger. 1 minute. And Mia immediately bypassed her entirely and walked straight to the aquarium against the far wall and pressed both hands flat against the glass. "Accounting," she said, pointing, "and legal." Marcus, behind them, made a sound of genuine delight.
"She knows their names."
"She's very thorough," Ethan said. Claire finished her call and came around her desk and stopped her chair a few feet from Mia, watching her watch the fish. And Ethan stood in the doorway of that office and watched the two of them, his daughter and this woman, and held very still, the way you held still when something was happening that you didn't want to disturb.
"The anemone,"
Mia said, not looking up from the tank.
"Does it have a name?"
"Not yet," Claire said. "I was waiting for someone with better ideas than Marcus." Mia considered this.
"Karen,"
she said. Marcus made an affronted sound from the doorway. "Karen," Claire repeated. "Why Karen?"
"Because she looks like she's in charge,"
Mia said, completely seriously.
Claire laughed.
"The real one, the full one, the one that broke through without asking permission." And the sound of it filled the office, and Mia turned around for the first time and looked at Claire directly, the way she looked at things she was making a final assessment of. Whatever she saw, she held it for 3 seconds. Then she said, "You're the one who heard my turn." "I am," Claire said. "On the phone. Your dad told me." "He brags about it," Mia said. "Does he?" Claire looked at Ethan with that corner of the mouth thing, the tell. He gave her nothing, kept his face neutral, and she looked back at Mia. "He told me you did it clean." "The second time," Mia said. "The first time, I went into the rose bush. On purpose, according to your dad." Mia looked at him. "You told her that? Was it not on purpose?" A pause. Her chin lifted slightly. "It was partly on purpose." Claire made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was in the same family. "I respect that," she said.
"There's a difference between falling and choosing where to fall."
Mia stared at her. Something moved across his daughter's face, something quick and private, and, Ethan recognized, significant. Because that was the thing his daughter had been doing her whole life, distinguishing between falling and choosing, between things that happened to you and things you decided. She'd been doing it since she was 5 years old, navigating a world where her mother was sick and then gone, and she'd done it with more grace than most adults he knew. And Claire had just said it like it was obvious, like it was just a fact about the world. "Your legs," Mia said, abruptly, directly, the way 8-year-olds said things before they'd learned to bracket the thing they actually wanted to know. "Mia," Ethan started. "It's okay," Claire said. She looked at Mia evenly. "What about them? Did you choose that too? Or did it just happen?" "It happened," Claire said. "A car accident, 6 years ago."
"Did you know it was going to happen?"
"No." Were you scared? Yes. No pause, no management, just yes. Very. Mia absorbed this. But you still built your company. I built it after, Claire said. I won't lie to you. The first year was very hard. I had to learn a lot of things over again. But then I decided that being scared of what happened wasn't useful. So I built something instead. Mia was quiet for a long time. Long enough that Marcus shifted in the doorway, and Ethan almost said something, almost reached for his daughter to give her an out. But he'd learned. Emma had taught him, Mia herself had taught him, to wait. My mom died, Mia said. I know, Claire said. Your dad told me. He talks about her. She was really good, Mia said. Not past tense in the way loss made things past tense, in the way that certain true things stayed present no matter what tense you put them in. She sounds like she was, Claire said. You're not like her. No, Claire said simply. I'm not trying to be. Mia looked at her for one more moment with those brown-green eyes that had always seen more than they were supposed to. And then she turned back to the aquarium and pressed her hand against the glass again. I'm going to call the anemone Karen, she said, to the tank, to no one in particular. Whether you name her that officially or not. Karen it is, Claire said. Ethan breathed. They stayed for an hour. Marcus made the good coffee and found a juice box for Mia from somewhere, and they sat in Claire's office and talked, the four of them, in the easy, overlapping way of people who were figuring out what they were to each other, and finding that the figuring out wasn't as hard as they'd expected. On the drive home, Mia was quiet again, but it was a different quiet, not the heavy, processing quiet of before. Lighter, like something had been resolved that she hadn't had language for before and now didn't need language for, because it was just a settled thing. They were almost home when she said, I like how she talks to me. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. How does she talk to you? Like I'm not little. A pause. Most adults talk to me like I'm little. She talked to me like I was just a person. He didn't say anything. He let that live in the air of the truck cab. Dad, Mia said. Yeah? You can keep seeing her. He exhaled slowly. Yeah? Yeah. She looked out the side window. She named the clownfish accounting and legal. She didn't do that. That was Marcus. But she kept the names, which means she thought they were funny. Which means she has a sense of humor. A pause. Mom have a sense of humor. She did. That matters, Mia said. It does. They pulled into the driveway. Mia got out with her backpack and walked toward the front door, and halfway there she stopped and turned around. Dad, she called. He looked at her across the roof of the truck. She looked at you, Mia said. The way you look at things, you're trying not to break. He stood in the cold driveway with his keys in his hand, and his daughter watching him with those impossible eyes, and he didn't have a single word for the entire complex truth of that sentence. What it meant, what it cost her to say it, what it gave him. So he just said, I know. Mia nodded once. Then she went inside. He stood there for another moment in the cold, looking at the front door, thinking about a woman 14 floors up, in an office with an aquarium and 2 clownfish with ridiculous names, and a laugh that broke through the management like weather. And he thought about the room in the back of his chest, the one with the lock on it, the one that had been shifting for weeks now, incrementally, without announcement. He thought about what Mia had said. The way you look at things, you're trying not to break. He thought, I'm not afraid of breaking anymore. I'm afraid of not trying. Then he went inside, because it was cold, and his daughter had left her shoes in the middle of the entryway again. and dinner needed to happen. And life was always, stubbornly, persistently, beautifully, continuing. But he pulled out his phone before he reached the kitchen. He typed, "Mia says you talked to her like she was a person, not a little kid. She said that matters." He typed, "She's not wrong." He put the phone on the counter, turned on the stove, heard it buzz 30 seconds later. Claire had sent one word, "Good." And then, 3 seconds after, "How are you?" He smiled at the pot on the stove. He typed back, "I'm actually okay. Actually, genuinely okay." Her reply came fast, like she'd been holding it. "Yeah?" "Yeah," he wrote, "for the first time in a long time." He set the phone down and made dinner, and outside the kitchen window the December sky had gone the particular deep purple-black of early winter evening, the kind that made the lights inside feel warmer than they were, the kind that made a house feel like a house. The bulb above the sink was new. It didn't buzz anymore. The essay came home on a Thursday. Mia dropped her backpack by the door the way she always did, with the specific carelessness of someone who considered the entryway a transitional zone, a place where the rules of putting things away hadn't yet kicked in. And she went straight to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator and stood there, looking at it the way she looked at things she already knew she didn't want. "How was school?" Ethan asked. "Fine." "Just fine?" "Mostly fine." She closed the refrigerator and opened a cabinet. "There's something in my folder." He looked at the backpack. "Should I read it now?" "You can read it whenever." She found the crackers she was looking for and sat at the counter. "It's not bad. I want you to read it when I'm not watching." He unzipped the backpack and found the folder and found the paper. Her handwriting, which she'd been working on since 2nd grade and which was now almost entirely legible, covered 1.5 pages. The assignment header said, "What my family looks like now. Mrs. Peterson, grade 3. He read it standing at the counter while Mia ate crackers and looked very deliberately at the wall. She'd written about the rocks. He'd forgotten about the rocks, the collection they'd started the summer after Emma died, when he'd been trying to find things to do with Mia that didn't require him to be fully present in the way he wasn't capable of being fully present yet. And they'd started picking up rocks on walks, interesting ones, and putting them in a jar on the windowsill. They had 14 now. Each one had a story. This one from the creek trail, that one from the parking lot of the hospital, the white quartz one that Mia had found on the day of Emma's birthday and carried in her pocket for 2 weeks before deciding it was ready for the jar. Mia had written, "My family used to be 3 people, and now it's 2. But I have been thinking about it, and I think that is not the right way to count. I think family is like our rock collection. You don't stop having the rocks you already have when you find a new one. You just have more rocks. My mom is still in the jar. She's the white quartz one because she's the prettiest and the most special, and nobody is ever going to move her. But there is room in the jar. There has always been room in the jar. I think maybe I was just afraid to look." He stopped reading. He stood at his kitchen counter in the December afternoon light, and he breathed very carefully, because the alternative was not breathing carefully, and his daughter was 6 feet away eating crackers and pretending to look at the wall. "I think maybe I was just afraid to look." He finished the essay. She'd written about Claire in the last paragraph. Not by name at first, just someone new. And then, "Her name is Claire, and she is in a wheelchair, and she is very honest, which I think is the most important thing a person can be. She doesn't try to be anything she's not. She doesn't try to be my mom. She is just Claire, which is its own thing. And I think that is a good rock to have."
He put the paper down. Mia. What? Still not looking at him. This is one of the best things I've ever read. She turned around. Her face was doing the complicated thing, the multiple feelings at once thing. Mrs. Peterson gave me a check plus. Mrs. Peterson is correct. She asked if she could put it on the board, the hallway board. What did you say? Mia picked up another cracker. I said yes. A pause. Is that okay? It's more than okay. He went around the counter and put his hand on her shoulder, and she leaned into him slightly. Not dramatically, just the small animal lean of a child who wanted contact without making a production of it. You know that, right? Whatever you said in this essay is exactly right. Nobody's going anywhere. Nobody's being replaced. I know, she said, into the counter slightly. You sure? I said I know, Dad. Okay. She ate the cracker. He kept his hand on her shoulder. Outside, the neighbor's dog was barking at something. A squirrel, a delivery truck, the general injustice of the world, hard to say. Are you going to tell Claire? Mia asked. Do you want me to? She thought about it with her full, characteristic seriousness. Yeah, she said. I think she'd want to know. A pause. She might cry. She might. That's okay, Mia said. I think she needs to sometimes. He didn't tell Claire over the phone. He told her in person, the following Saturday, when she came to the house for the first time. That had been another threshold. The house. Not discussed, not negotiated, just reached the way certain thresholds were reached. Naturally, and with a specific gravity of things that meant something. He'd asked. She'd said yes in the same flat, clear way she said the things that mattered to her. Without decoration, without the false casual that people used when they were trying to seem like they didn't care about something they cared about very much. She came at 11 in the morning. He watched her navigate the front path, which he'd cleared and checked twice that week, and she moved through it with the efficiency and the ease of someone for whom navigating a world not built for her was simply the texture of every day, not a thing to be remarked upon. She'd stopped briefly to look at the house, the whole of it, the front porch with the new steps that were Mrs. Donnelly's fault in a roundabout way, the window boxes Mia had put dried flowers in for winter, and her expression had done the thing that happened when something registered as real, as specific, as actually mattering. Mia was at the door before he could get there. Ethan hung back. He watched his daughter hold the door open with a kind of formal courtesy that was her version of welcome. And he watched Claire come inside. And he watched them look at each other with the specific recognition of two people who had done their thinking about each other and come to their own conclusions, and were now simply in the same room, past the point of figuring out. Karen's well, Claire said. She ate aggressively this morning. Good, Mia said. That means she's in charge. They sat in the living room, Mia cross-legged on the floor by the coffee table, immediately producing a deck of cards she'd apparently been holding in reserve. Claire beside the couch, Ethan in the chair across from them both. And the morning moved the way mornings moved when the people in them had decided, collectively and without a meeting about it, to simply be present with one another. He told her about the essay when Mia went upstairs to get something. Told her what it said, not reading it, just telling her. The white quartz rock and the jar and the room that had always been there and what Mia had written about her. Claire sat with it. She held it the way she held things she was feeling completely. Very still, very quiet, her hands in her lap, looking at the middle distance. She said you might cry, Ethan said. She was right. Claire's voice was controlled, but just barely. The management was there, but working hard. She's 8 years old. 8.5. She'd want me to specify. Claire pressed her lips together, breathed. A good rock to have,
she said quietly, to herself as much as to him, like she was testing the shape of it, the weight of it. I have never been described that way in my life. I have been described as formidable, relentless, difficult. She looked at him. Once by an investor who meant it as a compliment, but delivered it poorly, as terrifying. All accurate, probably.
All accurate, she agreed, and then, simply, without drama, but I think I like this one better. He reached across the space between them, the same way he'd reached across the coffee shop table that first time, just the weight of a hand, just the simplest version of, I'm here. And she turned her hand over and held his. That was where Mia found them when she came back downstairs, carrying the specific rock she'd apparently gone to retrieve, the white quartz one from the jar. She stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the hands, taking in the room, and her face did something that settled and stayed settled. She walked to Claire and held out the rock. Claire looked at it, looked at Mia. I want you to hold it for a while, Mia said. Not keep it, just hold it. Claire took it, both hands, like it was the kind of thing that needed both hands. Thank you, she said, and the management was completely gone, just for that moment, just completely gone. And what was underneath it was something that Ethan recognized from the river, the real version, the one that wasn't composed, the one that the cold and the current had briefly brought to the surface. Real and unguarded and completely, specifically, her. Mia sat back down on the floor and picked up the cards. Okay, she said. I'm going to teach you both a game. It's called Spite and Malice, and Grandma taught me, and it is not as violent as it sounds. I'll be the judge of that, Claire said, and she put the rock carefully in her lap and picked up her cards. January came the way January always came, without apology, dropping the temperature 20 degrees from December, and making the world go gray and still. Ethan had the commercial renovation project underway on the east side and was working 6 days a week, the kind of work that lived in the body, that demanded everything, and paid it back in the simple satisfaction of a thing being built. He came home tired in the specific way that was good tired, earned tired, the kind that let you sleep without negotiating. Claire called him on a Wednesday evening, and he heard it immediately. Something different in her voice. Something that wasn't controlled, wasn't carefully arranged. Something that was moving toward him fast. The shareholder coalition vote, she said. It went through. He straightened in his chair. Claire, we have 51.4%. Her voice was shaking, which was, he understood what it cost her to let it shake on a phone call. What that meant. From this woman who had fixed her makeup in the car after the board vote and gone back in. The board resolution is invalidated. They have to reconvene. My attorneys say, they say I have a clear path back to full operational authority by end of quarter. Claire, he said again. I know. She laughed, and it broke, which meant it was the realest one she'd ever given him, the one that hadn't been held together at all. I know. He closed his eyes for a second. He thought about her on that riverbank, pacing at the edge, arguing with her attorney about injunctions, about procedures, about the things she'd built being taken by people who thought they knew better. He thought about everything she'd told him in the months between then and now. The 12 months after the accident, learning to want things again. The 2,300 people whose names she knew. The first floor office above the dry cleaner, where she'd answered every phone herself for 3 months so she'd understand the work. He thought about what she'd said once, on a Tuesday night phone call. Progress is what it looks like in retrospect. You did that, he said. My lawyers did a significant amount of it. Claire, she was quiet. You did that, he said again. Same way you built everything else. Same way you've been doing it your whole life. You found the angle, and you went at it, and you did not stop. The silence that followed was soft, the good kind. "I want to come over," she said. "Then come over." "Is Mia?" "She's here. Come over." She was there in 40 minutes. Mia was at the kitchen table doing homework and looked up when the door opened and read Claire's face in about 3 seconds. "Good news?" Mia said. "Very good news," Claire said. "About your company?" "About my company." Mia put down her pencil. She considered for a moment, with the seriousness she brought to all meaningful occasions. Then she pushed back her chair and walked to Claire and hugged her. Not a small, tentative hug, a real one, both arms, the kind that meant something. And Claire put her arms around Mia and held on. And Ethan stood in his kitchen doorway, watching his daughter and this woman hold each other in the hallway of his house. And he felt something so large and so various that he didn't try to name it. Just let it move through him completely. "Okay," Mia said, stepping back, practical again, already moving back toward her homework. "Are we celebrating? Because if we're celebrating, I think we should get the good ice cream." "The good ice cream," Ethan said. "Absolutely." "The place on 5th, not the grocery store kind." "Understood." Mia sat back down and picked up her pencil. Claire looked at Ethan across the entryway, and he looked at her. And neither of them said anything for a moment because there wasn't a version of what needed to be said that fit in a sentence. He walked toward her instead. She reached up and took his hand without waiting for him to offer it. The way you took someone's hand when you had decided, completely, with both eyes open, that this was a person whose hand you wanted to hold. It was 2 weeks after that when she asked him the question. They were in his living room on a Sunday evening, Mia asleep upstairs, the house quiet with a particular quality of winter evening quiet. The furnace ticking, the snow beginning outside, the whole world muffled and close. They'd had dinner together, the three of them, and Mia had beaten them both at spite and malice for the 3rd week in a row and gone to bed at 8:30 with the contentment of someone whose world was currently the right size. Claire was quiet. Not the thinking kind of quiet. Something else. Something he hadn't seen before. Or not exactly. She was looking at her hands in her lap, and there was something around her that was the specific quality of a person holding something they hadn't put down in a long time, and trying to decide if they trusted the ground enough to set it down. "I want to ask you something," she said. "Okay." She looked up. Her eyes were steady, that gray silver, the eyes he'd looked into in 40-degree water, the ones that had never once looked away from the thing they were looking at. "I need you to answer me honestly." "I always answer you honestly." "I know. That's why I'm asking you." She paused. The furnace ticked. "There are things about my life, about the physical realities of my life, that are complicated, that are not simple, that are not what people expect when they think about—" She stopped. Started again. "I have been through this before. With someone who said all the right things and meant them, I think, at the beginning. And then the realities arrived, and the right things stopped." He didn't say anything. He waited. "I need to know," she said, "if you would stay." Her voice was even. She was looking at him with everything, the full version, nothing managed, nothing arranged. "Not the idea of me, not the version that you met at the river or talked to on the phone, or sat across from at the coffee shop. The full version. The version that has complicated mornings sometimes, and equipment that breaks at inconvenient times, and a body that doesn't always do what I need it to do, and medical appointments, and—" She stopped. Her jaw tightened slightly. "I have spent 6 years being the most capable version of myself in every room I enter, because I learned, very quickly, that the alternative was being seen as less than. And I am tired. I am so tired of performing capable. She breathed. Would you stay if I stopped? He held her gaze for a long moment. Would you stay, she said, if I took off all of it? The performance, the management, the put together? If I just showed you everything that it actually is? He thought about 4:47 in the morning, and the 3 seconds he gave himself every day, and the empty side of the bed, and the years of getting up anyway. He thought about Mia's essay, and the white quartz rock, and the jar on the windowsill that had room in it. He thought about a woman pacing the edge of a riverbank with everything she had riding on a phone call, and a woman in 40-degree water who held on and didn't let go, and a woman who named an anemone Karen and let an 8-year-old hold the real version of her without flinching. He thought about what he'd learned in 2 years and 9 months of carrying something very heavy, about what staying actually meant. It didn't mean easy. It didn't mean uncomplicated. It meant you looked at the real thing, the full thing, with both eyes open. And you stayed anyway. Not because you didn't see the weight of it, because you did, and you stayed anyway. Because the person was worth the weight. He leaned forward and took her face in his hands, gently, the way you held something you were not going to drop. Claire, he said, I pulled you out of a river. She let out a breath that had been held for a long time. That was the easy part, he said. I'm not going anywhere. She closed her eyes for just a second. 1 second, with his hands on her face and the snow outside and the house holding them both. Then she opened them. Okay, she said. Yeah, he said. Okay. Mia came down the next morning at 6:15, 3 minutes late as usual. One shoe untied as usual. The stubborn cowlick undefeated as usual. And she stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked at the kitchen table where Claire was sitting with a cup of coffee and Ethan was at the stove. And she took in the scene with the rapid, complete assessment that was her fundamental mode of engaging with the world. You stayed, she said to Claire. I stayed, Claire said. Mia nodded once, as if this confirmed something she'd already decided. She went to the counter and picked up her lunchbox and checked inside it with the focused efficiency of a customs official. Found the note, read it, put it back. 8 slices, she said, without looking up. 8 slices, Ethan confirmed. Good. She climbed onto her stool, looked at Claire. You can have breakfast with us if you want. Dad makes eggs on Mondays. I'd like that, Claire said. He puts cheese in them. Even better. Mia swung her feet under the stool and opened her orange juice, satisfied. The matter entirely settled. Outside, the snow from the night before sat clean and untracked on the front lawn. The kind of white that was genuinely white before the day touched it, before footprints and tire tracks and the ordinary business of living wrote themselves across it. Ethan stood at the stove and listened to his daughter tell Claire about Mrs. Peterson's new class project. And Claire asked the right questions in the right way. And the kitchen filled up with voices and the smell of eggs and the buzzing silence that used to live where the kitchen light had been before he changed the bulb. He thought about a grave in the rain and 3 seconds every morning, and a room with a lock on it, and a river that didn't care what it took. He thought about the way certain losses carved you open, and the way certain people, if you let them, if you were brave enough, or broken enough, or simply ready enough, walked into the space the loss had made and didn't try to fill it, just lived in it alongside you, and made the space feel like something other than absence. He thought about choice, about the difference between what happened to you and what you decided, about a woman who had spent 6 years being the most capable version of herself in every room she entered, and the look on her face when she finally set that down, and the fact that she had set it down here, in this house, with these people. He cracked the eggs. He put in the cheese. He listened to Mia explain the rules of spite and malice for the fourth time to someone who already knew them, and Claire play along with the patience of someone who understood that the real point of the explanation was never the rules. Some things ended. That was the truth, the hard and irreversible truth. And Ethan Cole had learned it in the worst way a person could learn it. Some things ended and left a shape behind that nothing would ever fill, and nothing should try to fill, because the shape was the memory, and the memory was the person. And you kept the person by keeping the shape. But some things also began, not instead, not as replacement, alongside, in the space that life, in its stubbornness and its persistence and its occasional improbable grace, kept insisting on making. Room for new things, room for chosen things, room for the particular and irreplaceable thing that was two people who had both been broken by the world, looking at each other and deciding, you. Ethan set the plates on the table. Mia moved her orange juice to make room. Claire put down her coffee cup and picked up her fork. And in the jar on the windowsill, in the winter morning light, the white quartz rock caught the sun the way it always did. First, brightest, permanent. And beside it, the others sat where they had always sat. Each one its own story, each one chosen. The jar full and still, somehow, always making room.